Namaste, namaste. Welcome now to our 75th talk on the Bhagavad Gita. In the beginning of the 16th chapter, the yoga of the division between the divine and the demonic. And since the whole chapter is about that, the subject is being continued. All right. Again, those who are Devic, see, Deva actually literally means a shining one. So there are those who are Devi and who are Asura, and that means without the light. That isn't their nature to be dark, so they're not darkness. It's important to know that too, no matter how bad a person may be in their conduct and so on. They are really God's light, but in their consciousness, they've lost it, and so they're blind and they're in the dark. But that holiness is there, ready to come about. And you'd be amazed at the people that will manifest it that you would think would never would. Just as I know you and I have both known people we thought they would never turn away from the right way, but they did. All right. We're ready for the 7th verse. Demonic men know not what to do. I mean, they actually don't know it. There are certain evil people. They know it's wrong to steal, but they steal. They know it's wrong to lie, but they lie. But when people are really bad off, they don't even know it. In fact, I've met people that didn't know the difference between truth and lies because they were so confused in their mind, they didn't even know when they were lying. That sounds odd, and it was extreme, but I've met such people. Demonic men know not what to do or refrain from. I'm confused. That's a common term, isn't it? Well, that's a terribly negative state. It sounds so light, so simple. We think, oh, well, a lot of people get confused. But when people talk about higher things and moral things, especially, they're not confused. There's a certain type of hellish person that they really got to strike out wherever they see light or they see truth. And they decide to get you sometimes. And so they like to come to you and say, there's something that confuses me. And now they're going to gripe about some spiritual principle you presented they don't like. Or there's something about you I don't like. Well, I'm confused. You said so and so, but then you did it, man. So trying to chip away at you. Trying to get you to say, oh, well, I don't want to be arrogant over you. Look them in the face and say, if you handed me something I didn't want it, I wouldn't take it in my hand. And I don't take in my mind what you have said. If you have nothing better to say or do, please go away. That's right. You have to say that to some people. You truly do. It's not pleasant at all. It's not enjoyable. But that's part of truthfulness. All right. Demonic men know not what to do or refrain from, or pretend that is so. Sometimes it's the real state, sometimes it isn't, but both are equally evil. Purity, shocha, also clarity, is not found in them. In other words, it's not even there. We often say, well, buried deep, everybody's good. So, and a certain level is true, and a certain level, as far as this incarnation is going, and as far as their minds are concerned, no. The Will Cuppy, who was a great New York humorist, in his book Decline and Fall of Practically Everybody, which, by the way, is great and funny, I recommend it. He wrote in a footnote, it's hard to see. It's sometimes hard to see the good in people, especially when it isn't there. So sometimes it isn't there. Nor is good conduct. I mean, these people don't know how to act right, or they have no impulse for it. They have no desire for it. They have no frame of reference for it. Nor is truth, either the full truth of the self or the truth about themselves. And therefore, by the way, don't pay attention to what they tell you because there's no truth in them. Now, sometimes they say nice things. Oh, you're more evolved than I am. Oh, you're much more evolved. I'm not as advanced as you are. Oh, there's a profane expression I love to say, but I guess I can't say it. But you should say it to them. How about the equivalent of that's what they deserve? So uh, there's nothing in them that's straight. You can't believe anything they do, and everything they touch is dirty. What does it say in the Bible about people like this? From such turn away. Turn away means turn around and get out. Truly. And if we got to get them out of your life, figure out how to do it. It's nothing wrong in wanting to figure out the easiest or the less messy way to do it. But please do it. All right. The world, they say, is without truth, without a basis, without God, of course. I don't see the need for a God. Of course you don't, fool. You're not doing and living according to the mode of life in which God is involved and leads you to higher consciousness. You're just a slug. You're just down in the mire and the dirt. So you're right. For you and your personal world is really without truth, is really unjustifiable, illegitimate, and without God. But the actual world is not what they say. But they have to claim that it's this much of a mess to excuse them being a mess and their continuance in that state of a mess. The world, they say, is without truth. There's no real truth here. You can't tell the truth. You never can know the truth. Well, that's got to be a lie, because if you can't know the truth, the statement you can't know the truth is a truth. So you've just spoken the truth. See the silliness, but the depth of the perversity also of the human mind and heart. Without truth, without a basis, has no purpose. There is no natural law. Well, for you, you're just a beast of the field. You're right. There isn't any higher truth. There isn't any basis. For you, there's no God. And so, to such people also, I love Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. And in these two books, in one of them, he puts a poem. It's supposed to be a song, actually. Called Old Father William. And it becomes, "You are old, Father William," the young man said, "and your hair is exceedingly white. And yet you incessantly stand on your head at your age. Do you think that is right?" And so then the whole dialogue comes. And he says, "Well, oh, Father William, why do you do this?" And of course, he gives these really fatuous answers. They're really good. But at the end, old Father William has gotten bored with this to him. And so he says to the young man, "Be off or I'll kick you downstairs." And you know, as my dear, glorious old Uncle Bill Swearingen, a patriarch of our teeny little town, one time said to my Aunt Fay, "You know, Fay, There are some folks that just needs talent. And the kind of people we're talking about, if they're pestering you, they need talent. Okay. Produced by mutual union is what's in my version. It isn't at all a good. There is no way uh, there is no way to really try. Oh, sorry, I don't have it right at hand. It's one of these 20 character words. But here it is. But I found, in addition to the Gita, this information. Oh, right, the word is aparaspara. Well, it's less than 20 characters, but anyway, it's a jawbreaker. Aparaspara, okay? Aparaspara is translated mutual union. Part of it mean, well, you're just here because your mother and father had sexual relations. You have the fools, I've had them look me in the face and say, my father made me. I remember I said to this one idiot, oh, you mean your father chose the color of your eyes? Your father chose the color of your hair, whether you have a lot of hair or less? Your father chose how tall you were going to be? You say he made you, and if he didn't do all that, he didn't make you. Oh, I just don't know how I can be so harsh to people. To fools, again, you don't suffer fools gladly. All righty then. Aparaspara is translated mutual union by many translators into English, but it literally means not one by the other, or not by a succession. Winthrop Sargent explains this very thing also. In his translation of the Bhagavad Gita, William Judge has not governed by law. And Sri Aurobindo put it, a world of chance. But it seems to me that the idea is denial of both cause and effect and the manifestation of the universe in an orderly and hierarchical manner according to exact laws. In other words, it's chaos science. Do you know people that are interested in chaos science? Yes, okay. There is no such thing as chaos. Not a bit, not anywhere else. We may see it as chaos, but it isn't. There's an order there too. And there's law there too. All right? Okay. We're all familiar with the atheistic, materialistic ideas about the universe being without meaning, purpose, or even order. But it seems to me that Vyasa is indicating that such a view of the world without either God or cosmic order is demonic. And of course it is. And their behavior is demonic as a result. Holding this view, we're at the 9th verse now. Holding this view, these lost souls, straying souls, they're wandering. They don't know where they are, and therefore, consequently, they don't know where they're going. And in most cases, they don't even know where they came from. Holding this view, these lost souls, small-minded and of cruel deeds, if not cruel to other people, they're cruel to themselves, and they're torturing themselves by their evil, negative, hostile views, because they're hostile to truth. All right, holding this view, these lost souls, small-minded and of evil deeds, arise as the enemies of the world. Now, they're little pipsqueaks, and you could no doubt buy a dozen of them for a nickel if you were going to really buy them according to what their moral worth is. But they're enemies of the world. They're little petty people, usually. But we get Stalin occasionally. We get Hitler. We get that kind also. But still, they're enemies of the world. They hate the world because they hate God, and the God comes from God. is the source of the world, and they hate the order that God has created. So they arise as the enemies of the world bent on its destruction. Now, some of them are just little spiders and little nets with little webs, a little bit of poison. But what are you doing around them? What are you having anything to do with them? You can say, well, my whole family's that way. Well, then sit down and think about what's logical to do. And certainly, if you have a toxic environment, get out, or you'll die along with it. And how long before you hear these truths again? Attached to insatiable desires, they like that. They want to keep wanting more, 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 get more. They like having it. They like to feel lust. They like to read dirty books and this and that. Pant like a dog. All right. So they're attached to it. They want to have it. That tells them they're alive. I remember there was this one pathetic young man at a psychic fair, actually. He was peddling stuff. And of course, he had umpteen body piercings. And he even had some things that were metal, and they were literally piercing into his neck. And somebody said to him, not censuring, they said, doesn't that hurt? And he says, it keeps me aware I'm alive. Think of that. Think of that. All right. There are people that they think they have to keep skewer themselves through the senses and through the emotions. And that means they're living full of hypocrisy, all kinds of contradictions, and so on. It doesn't necessarily mean they've decided to be that way. Their life has twisted them into that way. Full of hypocrisy, arrogance, and intoxication. See, they're drunk on it. They're sort of like, wow, they call it a high. Everything I've ever heard people call a high was an abysmal low. But when you're backwards, you think far is near and near is far. So you think what you call high is low, what you call low is high. Having accepted false ideas through delusion, somebody didn't delude these people. Somebody told them lies. There are people that like to do that too. Well, you never told me. Well, nobody ever told me. Well, nobody ever explained it. Nonsense. They lie to themselves. And they like it. And there are people that if you tell them a truth, they'll say, well, I have to think that over. You tell them a lie, however outrageous, they say, yeah, that's right. I never heard of that before, but I know that's right. They act with foul purposes. They defile themselves, they defile the world they're in, because how are they going to do it? A skunk stinks, and the skunk smells up the whole neighborhood where he is. And so, you see, you and I are interconnected with all the universe and with the life in the universe. And when we elevate ourselves, we bring some light, yes, into the cosmos. And when we degrade ourselves, we bring a further degree of darkness into the cosmos. Quite seriously. Clinging to boundless cares, ending only in death, with gratification of desire as their highest aim, convinced that this is all, bound by 100 snares of hope, given over to desire and anger. They love it. Actually, that's part of their personality, They seek to gain by unjust means accumulation of wealth to gratify their desires. That's one of the things they do. They start businesses, they do this and that, or they cheat people. They are thieves on many levels. So these are people, you see, they think they're the masters and they're the hopeless slaves, but because they've cooperated with it and deep inside being devils, they want it. So they are also responsible. That's a very ugly picture, but it's a very ugly state of being. And you and I can get into it at any moment. You and I tomorrow can be out on a street corner with a big sign saying, "Wake up, there is no God." It can happen. I've seen it happen to people. Not quite that drastically, maybe it took a few weeks. Never say, "I could never say that." Never say, "I could never do that." You can. You can. I think I may have told this. It's claimed to be true history that when Leonardo da Vinci wanted to paint the Last Supper, he thought, well, let's start with Jesus. He said, that's the most important. And so he searched, he walked all around the town looking for people. He think, could they be the model for Jesus? And he saw this really remarkable young man who looked like he was more than half an angel. He was just radiant. There was like just this goodness. And in every way, he looked again like a spiritual being, like more like an angel than a man. And so he went and spoke to him and asked him to pose for him. And he did pose. And he painted him then as Jesus there in the center. A lot of so-called Da Vinci Last Suppers we have are just prints that people have modified greatly because the real thing is a fresco and it's centuries old and therefore it's not all in perfect condition. But if you can find a photograph, picture of the real Last Supper that's on the wall, the fresco itself, and see that remarkable innocence that's there. So, so then he went and he found different people. He thought, well, that does look like St. Peter. Yes, that could be St. Philip. Da Vinci knew the Bible. And so he painted everybody, but no Judas. Because just as it would take someone as glorious to be Jesus, who can be so degraded, so low, so dark, that they could be Judas? And that was the last figure he needed, of course. And he searched and he searched. And by the way, it took some years to paint that because of finding the right models. So he was walking around and he saw this man whose face was just like ravaged with evil, with vice, with malice. He looked like a demon in living form. And he thought, that's it, that's my Judas. So I thought, well, how am I going to approach him and say, I need somebody as ugly as hell to be Judas? But anyway, he went toward him and the man looked at him and smiled and said, oh, buongiorno. Good day, Signor Da Vinci. And Da Vinci said, why, have we met? Do we know each other? He said, well, don't you remember? I posed for Christ in your painting of the Last Supper. And he changed into that. Think of this story, though we've gone a little over our time. I think I've told it before, but it's a good one. about the Board of Education that needed to hire a bus driver to go to the rural areas and pick children up and bring them to the school. And so they interviewed them. And they actually asked a very interesting question. They asked each interviewee, let's say you're in the school bus, it's filled with children, and it's the depth of winter. Everything is covered with ice. And you come to a bridge over some water, over a river that has no hand railings and has nothing on the sides. It's just a flat surface. And it's coated with ice, thick with ice. And you're going to have to drive over that to get them to school. How closely do you feel you could drive that busload of children over toward the edge? How close could you drive to the edge and feel safe? And people said, oh, like this far, I'm a good driver, I've got experience. But one man they asked said, I wouldn't drive near the edge at all. I would drive right down the middle of that bridge, and I would be scared to death every breath I took until I was at the other side. And they said, we hire you. We can't have anybody that thinks they can take a chance with the lives of the children. Well, it's your life you're in charge of now. You're the bus driver. And believe me, the world is in winter. And the road is icy. And we have to be aware of the danger. Forewarned is forearmed. That's right. And so I've gone almost nearly half the time over, but it's serious. Because you see, religious people are supposed to be nice and positive and pointing to the light and saying all these little things, and tell little silly platitudes about how if you did little nicey things, that what a fine person you'll be and so on. But you understand, when I was a fundamentalist, we sang a song. And it talks about the fate that is people after death. They may have been meaning to scare us a bit, but they were telling us the truth. And it said, what an awful picture. To some it will come true. And oh, my brother, sister, will it be I or you? The apostle said to Jesus, oh Lord, is it I? When he said, one of you will betray. And we should pray that will never be us. But we should know that as long as we draw breath in this body, it can be us. We're capable of betrayal. We're capable of turning around and going back into the light. There are people who do it after decades of spiritual discipline and practice as best they understood, and then suddenly gone. Gone. And in a sense, by the cosmos, forgotten. Let's not choose that destiny. And that means we dare not choose even a shadow of the life that will lead us to that terrible destiny. So, forward into the light.